Hey guys, you're hanging with Rich with Project F30. Today I'm actually doing a video over the features of the JB4 Mobile App. Lately, the JB4 has been a powerhouse when it comes to piggyback tunes for the F30, specifically around the N26 and the N20 motors. So one of the coolest things that have come out lately are the mobile app, to where you can control some of the features of the JB4. So had a lot of questions about the functionality, and there aren't a lot of videos out there about that with some screenshots. So I wanted you to be able to see how the app works in real time and about the functionality of what it can do for you on a daily basis. One of the features that the JB4 app adds for you is the ability to be able to monitor your car in several different ways. There is a set of 6 gauges that you can actually select and change to many different types of readouts. Might be boost, pounds per PSI. It could be the oil or the water temperature, could be the intake air temperature, could be the trims if you're looking to run E85. So there's a lot of different gauges that you can use and have up while you're driving if you have an apparatus to hold your phone up to monitor the engine. More importantly is, it gives you the opportunity to be able to data log and to be able to take some readouts and analyze the motor by giving you a graph or a chart, to where you can break down what your motor is doing, whether it be at wide open throttle or if it's part throttle, whatever have you. It has an auto log feature to where you can set a parameter to where if throttle hits 50% or higher, you're able to automatically make logs, and then you can choose the ones you want to keep. I personally have it set at 90% because I do a lot of driving. If it's set at 50%, I'm going to have a million different data logs that I have to feed through, and I only want certain ones. So just to avoid clogging up your phone, you may want to set that at 80 or 90% just in case. So anyways, the piece of the video after this shows you what that looks like, how you can change your gauges, what it actually looks like as it's data logging or as it's auto logging, and then also changing the 6 gauges that you have. You can choose whatever you want to out of those. So check this out. One of the most important things that we can do as a community is be able to look at the values. If you don't understand what the values are telling you, then honestly, you might as well not log at all. Or if you're smart, you think about it and you say, okay, let me find a forum. Obviously, a forum is a great place to find somebody who knows something about these. So as you're data logging and pulling, doing wide open throttle pulls, third gear pulls to find out what your motor is doing, whether it be boost wise, ignition wise, whatever have you, it's important to have someone who can interpret it, right? So there's an example afterwards about what those graphs and what those charts look like on the next part of the video. Also, what I would suggest is when you start to do some data logging, one, do a pull from first gear to about 4th gear, wide open throttle as long as you can stand it, if you can find a stretch of road that long. More importantly is do a 3rd gear pull from about 2,000 RPMs so that you can find out what the motor is doing in 1 gear and look at exactly what that boost curve is doing. If you're running ethanol, how is the ignition and how is the car handling it? And should you be running lean? That's a bad thing. You want to make sure that you've got enough in your fuel to air ratio to make sure that you're not going to grenade this motor. When you're playing with fuel, it can be a very volatile thing. You could blow your motor, so make sure that if you're doing this, you're logging it and you're having someone interpret what you're seeing. You can see those values in a chart, which is kind of cool to see what the curve looks like. We all know what charts look like. And then 2, you want to see what that looks like in a graph because you can visually see the curve. Charts are preferred if you're looking for hard values at a specific RPM. How much boost are you hitting? What's the actual value for the intake to air ratio? What's the actual value for your air to fuel ratio? Those are important for people who are trying to analyze what your motor is doing. The graph just kind of looks cool. And then more importantly is you can see what the power curve looks like visually in the app. So check that piece out really quick. One of my favorite parts of the JB4 mobile app is being able to read and delete codes, right? So before the mobile app, thank you DME, before the mobile app, you could only delete codes by going into the CAN bus functionality from your signal stock, and you could say, okay, well, I've got a code. You would either have to hook up to a laptop and figure out what that code is. That could be cumbersome if you don't tote around a laptop all the time, or you just delete it and say, oh, I don't know what the heck it was. It doesn't save unless you actually physically save that code. So in the app, it's a really easy thing to where you can actually read it at any time. You can find out what code it's giving you, and then you can save that code for later if you say, okay, well, I'm going to delete it right now, but I want to check out what that means later. Could be an important thing that says, okay, yeah, my motor's not running correctly. What's the code throwing? Is it ignition? Is it fuel? Does it detect a downpipe? Some of those codes we say, oh, I knew about that, so I just want to delete it and move the heck on. Unfortunately, well, fortunately for some, but unfortunately, the JB4 is becoming 50-state compliant, so they decided that they were no longer going to do the auto clear of the codes, which can be a good thing because you want to make sure that if there is a code popping up, that at least you've read it and you know what it is. If it's something that you know about, delete the code and roll on. If it's something that you didn't know about, maybe your motor is telling you something and your car is telling you something. So it's really important that you can read those codes, save those codes, and then if you really need to, delete them. So there's an example of that. Also in the next part, there's a whole bunch of settings that you can go through that really are important to folks who run ethanol, folks who run water methanol injection, folks who are more skilled at creating some sort of custom map. So remember on the JB4, the map number 6 is a user input and user defined map. So you can use map number 6 to change your boost, create a custom map specifically for the setup that you're running. I wouldn't suggest doing that unless you really have a lot of experience and you've analyzed this up and down and you know what you're doing when you're setting those values. You're not just jacking the boost up to 24 and hoping for the best. That's a good way to blow your motor. So it's really easy to scroll through this menu and find things that are really important. It's also really easy to change maps. Changing maps on the fly was maybe a 2-minute process, and now it literally takes 5 seconds. So there's an example of that on there as well. And then it kind of gives you an idea of what the water methanol injection piece looks like in the app. So if you are running WMI, of course you can set up those values as need be. The last part of the video has to deal with read-only values. So you always want to know what version that you're running, because for the N20, N26, we just got an update up to EWG 6-T4 or something like that, and it added the cool little gauge sweeps that I've had a video on before. So, you know, having the most updated firmware makes sure that you have the most updated features. If they've changed any maps, you have those. If they've made some improvements, Terry does a really great job at Burger Motorsports by keeping us updated and allowing us to have those updates for free. So that's another thing that you can actually do in the app. That's covered in another video. But with that being said, you can see what version that you have and see if you're running the most updated version, updated firmware, and you can look at a couple other values, like what does your ignition timing look like. It has the ability in the expert mode to switch some of that stuff around. So if you want to mess with your ignition timing, it's possible. I wouldn't suggest it unless you're really an expert. And then again, you can go into map 6 and set a custom map, or map 3 if you're running water methanol injection. So definitely take a look at this, and if you have trouble navigating the app, you know, these values are really, really important if you are running these things. Guys, well, that's it. I hope that was really educational for you. I hope that it helps. It's the first thing that I did to start playing around with all of these different features in the app, and honestly, it's really fun to just plug up the app and take a look at what your car is doing moment by moment. More importantly is, you know, as you're running around, if you're playing around with fuel, it's really important that you know what these values look like all the time. So if you are running E30, plug up your phone. If you have the Bluetooth Rev 3, then of course you can do this wirelessly. I run a USB cable, but you know, just having those values at your fingertips are really, really important. And in order to keep your motor safe, you want to make sure that you're falling into safety specs and things like that. There's been a lot of folks that have posted grenaded motors, things like that, and it's probably because either A, they jacked up boost, or they changed a value, or they did something that their motor wasn't ready for. The most common problem for the N20, N26 is that you are adding ethanol and you're running lean, and literally your motor cannot take that. So keep an eye on that stuff. If you ever have any questions or concerns, you can always shoot a map over to Terry and his team at n54tech.com. Post a log that you've run, post a third gear pull, and they can take a look and see, and let them know what you're doing. Are you running E30? Are you running methanol? Those sort of things. They're a lot more experienced, and they've played around with all of these things, so you have help when you need it. Well, anyways, guys, this is Rich from Project F30. Thanks for listening. Please, if you are looking to see more of these videos, DIYs, things like that, definitely subscribe to my channel, and love to see you again. Thanks.